Hey MicroGrinders, how's it going? Out and back again for another installment of our How to Beat Bovada 5 and L series. I believe I am on the fourth or fifth live play video, and I plan on making maybe one or two more, simply because our videos are only 30 minutes and normal videos are 60 minutes, so they get double the content. Since it's only half the content, I'll try to do a total of somewhere between 7 and 8 videos total. Here we're calling with the up down, even though we don't have the flush draw, and then here we're raising under the gun, and we are just folding ace-9 off in the big blind. And then against this player, we're gonna raise it up. Only thing it beats me at this point is a 4-7. And then again here on table 2 up top, we are going to be value betting ace jack against a 44-25 and a 13-0. This guy is super nitty, so I'm not too worried about him getting out of line. He's going to play fit or fold for the most part. Earlier, before I started the video, he limped pocket fours, open limp pocket fours in the cutoff, which was very interesting and super nitty. That's why he's, I guess, an 18-15. Here against 40-15, so we have two options. First option is we could 3-bet and take down the pot as it is right now, or I could just smooth call with my pocket jacks and be so far ahead of him in general with my range, and let him value to himself. So because he is a really bad player, rather than 3-bet, I want him to make mistakes post flop, so I'm just going to call, and I don't mind this short stack calling as well. Unfortunately, this flop is about as bad as it gets with 2 overs, but that's the risk you take. I feel there's more money to be made post flop than just automatically thinking we should be 3-betting pre-flop. If you want to just play straightforward, the straightforward move is 3-bet pre-flop and be done with it. Here, king 7 suited in the cutoff, I'm just going to go ahead and fold. And then when he fires out, he's obviously got an ace or a queen. More likely than not, he's got an ace. And looking at his stats, he's a 40-15. He's only raising the top 15% of his range. So he could easily have an ace in this spot. So we're just going to go ahead and fold our jacks. It'll be interesting to see what happens, because this player, player 4 on table 1, he's a bit of a, I'd say, a nit passive, and he just folds as well. So unfortunate flop for me. I was looking for a better flop and hoping that he would come out firing on a bad flop and just c-bet, and I just call and let him take it down. Oh, sorry, call and let him value down himself. But that was just a bad flop. Not much we can do there. And that's one thing I recommend when you're out of position. You don't always have to be 3-betting in the top of your range. Against certain opponents, especially opponents that are full stacked, sometimes you can just smooth call and look to outplay them post flop. So just don't automatically be thinking that 100% we should be 3-betting the top of our range, because you don't really need to play that way 100% of the time, but a majority of the time you should be looking to 3-bet. So this is a pretty good flop. Only concern is king jack is in one of the ranges. Obviously I have a blocker to the king, so that's less likely. Because there is a flush draw, a straight draw on the board, we're going to bet a little larger than usual. King queen's more likely. King jack, there's a jack on the board, so definitely blocks that. This is an interesting repop all in here with this nit. I think he could be jamming with a combo draw, a pair and a flush draw, or a pair and a straight draw. On this board, I'm going to go ahead and call it off because he's short stacked. It's only another 30 big blinds to call. And he could easily have King Jack. I really don't see pocket deuces in his range. A lot of the times I think he is on a draw, so we're going to call. And if he has King Jack, good for him. And at this point he is dominated and we take it down. Ace-7 off under the gun. Again, not a good hand to be opening in early position, so we just want to be folding this hand. And getting back to this hand, and that's one of the silly things that bad players do. You have to look at the board texture and see what makes sense. So on this flop, I have a blocker to the king, so it makes it much less likely he does have a king. A jack being out there makes it much less likely he has a jack. It's so much easier for him to jam over the top with a combo draw than having a king, but in this instance he did have a king, and I'll be folding the queen 9 there and the 9-4. But if you just think about, you know, in terms of combinations and the cards that he could have, it's much more likely for him to have something like a queen 10 or an ace X of hearts, maybe a jack X, something that gives him a combo draw. So really need to think about, you know, the possibilities. This is such a good flop for somebody just to jam all in, especially when the short stacked. But you know, sometimes you'll see bad players value tan themselves. You know, he did have king queen, you know, top pair, second best kicker. So the jam itself in a vacuum is just a horrendous play. If I was him, I think a 3-bet makes more sense on a wet board. In terms of just going ahead and jamming all in for roughly another 30 big blinds into a pot that's a third of his stack, I just think that's a bad move in general. And then here on table 2, we're semi-bluffing with a flush draw and the backdoor straight draw. So under the gun, ace-5 off, again, that's a fold. Cut off. 2-10 off, again, that's just a simple fold. And on the button, 3-9 suited, again, horrendous cards, so be folding that. Table 1 with the ace-5 off, if it folds around to us, we'll go ahead and open it up. If he opens, then we're just going to fold. And he opens for 4.5x, so we're definitely folding. Down on table 3, we are looking to 3-bet our queens. And so this is an interesting spot against under the gun open. We're going to go ahead and 3-bet. I'm a bit worried about his range here, even though I am going to 3-bet into him. But if you think about his range, he's a 41-11, so he's, again, his opening range is super nitty, especially under the gun. But with queens, you know, out of position, we want to be 3-betting. And interesting that he just flats at that point when he flats a 3-bet on a 2-9-2 board. You know, we pretty much have the nuts. So I'm going to go ahead and bet out around 3/4 pot. With kings and aces, he's usually going to repop us, and that's probably the worst turn card. I'm going to be bet folding here. So we're going to continue to rep our hand, and if he goes ahead and calls, at this point, he's obviously most likely got an ace. So, and then against the 17-17, I'm going to defend lightly because I'm getting such good odds. Here we're going to be checking. And he called a 3-bet with an ace-5, so that was just horrendous play on his part pre-flop. Opens, so we'll make a note on him, and then here we'll be folding. And we are just going to smooth call. His range is super wide in the cutoff. And we're going to check our ace here. Interesting hand here. We're going to call with our ace. It's not strong enough to raise on that board, but it's definitely strong enough to be check calling. And again, just let him bet his whole range. There's really no reason to raise him. If we raise, we usually only get called by better and we fold out worse. So by just checking out of position, you allow a bad player to go ahead and value town themselves. And if he did backdoor me, he backdoored me. Good for him. With that hand, there's no way we were going to get him off it. If we re-raised, we were probably going to play for stacks or have to fold. So trying to get this replayer to load. Again, this player opened King 9, so I don't mind playing against him. Here we're going to call with the Ace 4. Jack 10, offsuit on the button, we're going to smooth call as well. But again here, you know, on this flop we raise, he's obviously calling. You know, he's probably re-raising and he's going to want to play for stacks with the flush draw. And then we'll be opening the Queen 10, of course. Again, we'll be calling. And then ace is up. We're just going to go ahead and raise it up with our 2 pair. If he does end up having, and we're going to check here, this board's just way too wet. And then when he bets out that large, let's go ahead and fold. Of course, with the pocket kings, easy ISO raise. Want to make a note to attack this player when we do have a strong hand with the Jack 10. First off, on this spot where we ISO raised and he called, we're going to go ahead and bet out. Look to get stacks in. And getting such good odds with overs. We really only have 6 outs. I'm going to go ahead and call. Hope to spike a Jack or a 10, or take the pot away if he slows down. And we'll go ahead and bet, representing a 9. So that was a good spot to bet against this player. He obviously gave up on the river, and he saw on Showdown that I played somewhat passively with my ace and called down, and so when I got aggressive, he obviously probably put me on a very strong hand. Either that or he was bluffing and he couldn't beat anything and he gave up his hand, so pretty easy spot to be in there. King 4 off, even though these odds that we're getting with everybody else in the pot, we're still just going to go ahead and fold. It's just a bad hand to be playing out of position to 2 players. In my eyes, it's just really not worth another big blind, even though we're getting roughly 7-1 pot odds. King Queen off is a good hand just to defend a raise. So yeah, this is a min raise. I could 3-bet him, but his range is so wide, my king queen plays well to allow him to value town, so we'll be flatting him, and we don't mind this fish coming along as well. On this flop, on a deuce 7 jack flop, we have 2 overs. We'll be floating a majority of the time, depending upon the sizing of the bet. Ace 7 suited in middle position. I'm going to go ahead and just fold this hand. And again, we'll be checking here, folding this hand, and king 5 suited in the small blind, just be folding that. At this point, we'll just be folding our kings and queens overs because we only have really 6 outs, and we're not really happy if we see a backdoor heart draw, so we don't have much equity at all, so we'll just fold. And during the downtime, we'll go ahead and take the opportunity to start labeling more players as fish. Again, this player's a fish. Queen 8 off, under the gun. Easy fold. Up here on table 2, player 1, his stats indicate he's a fish, 49-17. Player deuce up here as well. He's limping every pot. Obviously a fish. Player deuce on table 4 as well, 63-38 over 8 hands. Very indicative of a fish, so we'll just go ahead and label him as well. Looking to see what happened with that ace queen. Player 4 limped that pre-flop. It looks like possibly could have limped. My replayer isn't being fairly friendly with me today. It's actually, I'll go ahead and show everybody. So trying to look at some replayed hands, and this is what it comes up as. So I can't really determine what the heck went on in the hand. As you see, it's all garbled, so not coming out well, so just giving up on that. Ace 8 suited in middle position. Let's go ahead and fold. Be folding this hand as well, and then the cutoff queen 7 off. Be folding that. Up here on table 1, if player 1 doesn't open, I'll be opening up my queen 10 off on the button. And when he does limp, I'll be ISO raising, and I'm going to be calling under the guns raise here as well. Could 3-bet, but I prefer to call in position. Then we flop top pair, second best kicker. Only thing I'm worried about is hearts, ace jack, queens, kings, of course, aces. With top pair, second best kicker, we'll be calling. Interesting for this player is I'm not really 100% sure what his calling range is. Heart draw is in it. Now when he bets out pot, this somewhat concerns me. Usually a player is not going to be firing pot with nothing but air. The fact that I have top pair, second best kicker makes me think I am not good in this spot. He also could have picked up a backdoor draw. Having top pair getting 2-1, I'm going to go ahead and call. and then based upon the river we'll reevaluate based upon if he jams or not, and he checks, he gives up. We have good showdown value, so we're going to check. And he had a set of jacks, so unfortunate. Running into a lot of big hands on this table and getting coolered a lot. So we'll make a note that seven, 8 off, be folding that in the small blind, 4, 8 off on the button, easy fold there, 5, 10, no equity whatsoever, so just be folding that hand, and ace queen, we're obviously going to be playing this hand. When he raises, we're just going to flat. We have position on everybody, and then on this flop, when he checks, with my ace high, I do have equity, so I'm not just purely stabbing at the pot with nothing. If he does call me, I have draws to an ace or queen, so I'm going to go ahead and bet with my ace high. And give him a chance to give up his equity share of the pot. Against this 32-14 limping under the gun, we'll be ISO raising with our ace jack off in the cutoff. Fairly standard play there. I recommend not isolating too wide of a range. We want to have card advantage to go with our positional advantage. We don't want to end up value tying ourselves, so just be careful and don't isolate too wide because you'll get people calling like this player here. He's 0-0 over 6 hands. On such a dry board, I am going to fire away. Run 2/3 pot. And, you know, this is such a great board to fire away as a bluff and rep that queen. I repped a strong range when isolated. And on such a dry board, I can easily rep the queen. And if he doesn't have a queen and he just has a really small pocket pair or some random Broadway cards, he's going to fold a majority of the time. Seven, 3 off, small blind. We'll just be folding that hand. Of course, pocket aces. I mean, what else are you going to do except open them up pre-flop? Hopefully somebody 3-bets so I can 4-bet them. And then on this try flop, we're also just going to go ahead and bet out. It's going to bet out a little on the larger side because I want to get value for my aces and a naked jack. And when the 5 hits, I'm not too worried about him having a 5. I'm more, you know, I put a jack more so in his range. And then when he calls again, we're just going to continue to bet for value. And I would put him on something like a jack king at this point or jack queen. And we'll go ahead and take a look at what he had. got him to call me down with as weak as a Jack-10. So, and the thing with this hand is, let me go ahead and see what's going on with this hand. Go ahead and fold that out. Against this button raise and a call, we're going to go ahead and defend as well. So on this flop, you know, we pretty much had the best situation where he did flop top pair and we got him to call. When the 5 hits, you can't assume that he has a 5 and slow down with your aces because you're out of position. Think realistically, what's he going to be calling you with? And a majority of the time, he's not going to call you with a naked 5. He's not going to call your pre-flop raise with a 5 in his range. It's going to have a Broadway. So just keep firing away. And then if you get check raised, then assume he has a 5 or he has a set or full house or trips, and then you can reevaluate based upon the player and fold. But a majority of the time, they're not going to have a 5. So just don't get scared and slow down because you see the board paired. Up here on this with just overs, we're going to fold. And the King 9, we're going to head and fold. And, you know, you see a lot of players, the board pairs, and they automatically get scared and they slow down. But if it doesn't make any sense, especially for somebody like him, that's a 30-17, you know, he's likely not to call an under-the-gun raise with something like a 5-6 or an ace-5. He's more likely to call with broadways, and so the jack made much more sense than a 5. And in terms of that hand and my bet sizing on the river, in hindsight, I think it was a bit on the small side. I think I went for about 60% pot. I think I probably could have got called by, you know, a little more. I could have jammed the river to make it look weak, and he possibly could have called as well. Anyways, those of you watching this video definitely interested in seeing and hearing your feedback on the forums on my river bet sizing. Jack 5, just be folding that hand. And of course, we're just going to smooth call with King Jack. No reason to get out of line and squeeze play here. Getting really good pot odds to call. It's not that strong of a hand. We got 2 weak players. Actually, we have 1 weak player and we have an unknown in the pot. And this is very interesting that he donks out. We're obviously not folding. I'm going to time bank it for a minute before I make the call. And we'll go ahead and make the call. A good flop here. We flop the open ender, so go ahead and semi-bluff this pot. And then when he checks, this is very interesting. So when a player donks out, obviously we know nothing about him or his stats. When he donks out like that, he's usually on a draw, so I wouldn't be surprised if he's on a small diamond draw. Or he could potentially have a gutter like me as well, and he decides to check back the turn because he missed his draw. Either that or he has just a really weak queen. And then of course we miss, so we'll just be check folding at this point. Against his players, cut off open, and he did. He had the ace-high flush draw, so we were right. And of course, this player played uber passive. That was very interesting. King 10, out of position against this player. I'm not going to defend. I think it's just a little too small. And then, of course, top 2 here, we're going to be betting for value. And looks like we're coming up on 30 minutes, so I'll wait until I go ahead and pass through my blinds. And we'll go ahead and end the video at that point. So on the button here, that's a fold. King 10 here, it's just too weak to be isolating. This player, he's a 41-10. I highly doubt he's going to raise. So I'm just going to call the 3 cents to complete and try to hit a monster on the flop. And then we flop the gutter, so we'll just be check calling if the price is right. Again, check calling if the price is right. If not, we'll just be folding. And then on this bet out here, even if somebody does call, if one player calls, we're not going to be calling. Even if two call, we're still getting 4-to-1 pot odds, which is not good in this situation, so we'll just be folding. And then, of course, with the pocket kings, we're looking just to isolate. And I'm going to actually make it on the larger side. I'm going to make it 85 cents because we have the limper here. Hoping this player shoves. Player 3. I mean, I pretty much gave him no option but to shove. One thing I dislike about Bovada, I think if he calls, I am only allowed to call. I wish I was allowed to reshove, because if an ace hits the flop like this, it's pretty much the worst flop in the world for me. At this point, I'm going to be checking. And we're just going to go ahead and check down at this point. So that's the one thing I hate about Bovada. Let me know what you think, people, in terms of betting out right there with my kings. You know, when this player jams, this player just goes ahead and flats my 3-bet cold. You know, not a small 3-bet, but a large 3-bet. And then it flops an ace-jack. I think by the river I could have bet out, but I think a weak ace is easily in his range. So, I mean, I think on this flop, and he actually had a queen 10, so I think I could have gotten value. And then when this player had a jack queen, very interesting. Not too surprised him being a short stack, but, you know, what do you think? Are we firing away on this? I think we might get called by worse a small portion of the time, but a majority of the time on a 3-bet pot where he just cold calls him and I 3-bet, he jams, he calls. I think an ace is easily in his range, so I think checking is a smarter move. On the turn when the 10 hits, it makes the board even more wet. And any pocket pair that he might have called with, you know, a pair of jacks, pair of 10s set up as well. So let me know what you think the way it played out, me just checking it down to the river. I think there is a case to be made that I probably should have fired away at least on the turn of the river. Rather than checking down, but you know, in this instance, I feel like I kind of knitted out and got really passive. So, interesting spot, the micros. I don't think you're going to see this very often at the higher stakes, where player open raises for 4x, player flats. I make a huge 4x 3-bet. He jams all in. He calls. Unfortunately, I can't rejam. Otherwise, I would have rejammed. So, let me know what you think. And I believe one more hand for this table and we'll be done. In terms of the overall session, looks like up around 20, 40, 60, around 70 big blinds. So 70 big blinds in just over, or just around 200 hands. So that's around 35 big blinds per 100. Again, I'm not getting out of line with the style of my play, as you've noticed. When I get a strong hand, I'm betting it. For the most part, when people are just being overly passive, I'm taking pots away, but I'm not getting out of line with bluffs. And as you've seen, and I think you've heard, Bovada is probably one of the softest sites out there on the internet. Their 5&L is probably one of the softest games on the internet. So if you play a straightforward type of game where you're just, you know, have a very strong value-oriented game, you're going to do well. You don't need to be too crazy, too aggressive. Just play straightforward. Bluff when it's the right time to bluff, when somebody's showing major passivity, or the pot merits the bluff when it's a really dry board and you can rep a strong range. But for the most part, at other times, you know, don't need to get out of line with bluffing. We just take our money when we can, when we get to, you know, to showdown with a very strong hand. Yeah, and just play it that way. So hope hopefully everybody enjoyed the video. You learned something from it, and hopefully you can provide me some feedback as well, because I think there were some iffy spots, like on table with my aces, my value bet sizing on the river. Thoughts on that? I think it was kind of small. I think I could have bet more, putting him on a jack, and then down here with the kings. That was an interesting spot. Don't get in that type of spot too often. So thoughts on me checking down my kings on that board as well. Alright everybody, thanks for watching, and hopefully you'll watch the next video. Take care.